One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everybody, Sam Jacobs. Welcome to the Sales Hacker Podcast. Today on the show, we've got a very special guest. We've got my friend Vikas Bhambri. Vikas leads customers, sales, and customer experience department, overseeing sales, BD, implementation, customer success, and support. If you don't know Kustomer, that's with a K. It's a customer experience platform. Vikas is a well-respected sales leader here in New York City, but also comes from a sales engineering and product background. So I think his insights are going to be really interesting and helpful. Now, before we get there, we want to thank our sponsors. We've got a new sponsor on the show today. So today's sponsor is Vidyard. Now, email isn't dead, but man, is it boring. Add video to your emails to stand out in the inbox for free with Vidyard. Vidyard helps you easily record, send, and track who is viewing your video content in 3 easy steps. First, easily record your screen or yourself on camera right from your browser. Next, share your videos and email with just a few clicks. And finally, see when someone watches your videos. Vidyard will let you know who clicked play and how much they watch. Go to vidyard.com/saleshacker for more information. Our second sponsor is Outreach, that's outreach.io, the leading sales engagement platform. Outreach supports sales reps by enabling them to humanize communications at scale, from automating the soul-sucking manual work that eats up selling time to providing action-oriented tips on what communications are working best. Outreach has your back. Without further ado, let's listen to my interview with Vikas Bhambri. Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs. Welcome back to the Sales Hacker Podcast. Today we've got a very special guest. We've got Vikas Bhambri on the show, who is both a member of Revenue Collective here in New York, but more importantly, the head of revenue in many senses for the company Kustomer. That's Kustomer with a K. I'll give you his bio and his background really quickly, and then we'll dive into the conversation. But Vikas's background is a lot around sales engineering as a path into sales and revenue leadership. And so we're going to be talking about, and a lot of folks have written about, what does it mean to be a sales engineer? Let's talk about sales engineering as a concept and as a skill and as an aptitude. And so we're excited to have Vikas on the show. Now, his bio, he leads Kustomer, that's Kustomer with a K, sales and customer experience departments overseeing sales, business development, implementation, customer success, and support. So basically anything that faces the customer, Vikas is responsible for. Over the last 20 years, he's worked in a number of different roles and at market leaders like Oracle, LivePerson, and 8x8 in the CRM and contact center space in both North America and EMEA. He's worked at companies at all sizes and stages to leverage technology to enhance their people and processes to best acquire, grow, and retain customers. Vikas builds teams that follow this ethos. It's his responsibility and their team's responsibility to deliver knowledge and value in every conversation that they have with customers and partners. Vikas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sam. I really appreciate you having me.
We're excited to have you. We start with the baseball card. We want to understand Kustomer with a K's, a little bit more about that company, but give us your official title.
Sure. So I am the SVP of Sales and Customer Experience here at Kustomer.
Awesome. And tell us, what is Kustomer? Who is Kustomer?
Yeah, who is Kustomer? Kustomer is a SaaS technology company based out of New York City that is helping leading customer service brands like Untuckit, Paddle, Anomaly, and Bulletproof to leverage our customer service platform for their contact center agents to deliver a reimagined approach to customer service. So when we think about a reimagined approach to customer service, it's one that is truly omnichannel, data-rich, and automated whenever it needs to be.
When you say omni-channel, do you mean like you're texting with customers? I mean, obviously it's every channel, but are those some of the new ways that you're reaching out and engaging, or your customers are reaching out and engaging with their customers, is through things like text messaging?
Absolutely. When we think about engaging customers today, it's texting, it's WhatsApp, it's Facebook Messenger, it's Twitter, it's chat. Wow. Yes, there's still some email and voice in there, but it's all those channels. So absolutely, we support all of them. And we have our unique twist to omnichannel, because a lot of people use that term nowadays. But for us, it really means following the customer regardless of channel. So if they, to your point, go from SMS to chat to Facebook Messenger, we want to make that all seamless. And we want to put that so that an agent who's supporting them can see that one agent has actually touched us through these 3 different touch points about the same specific issue.
Wow, Cool. Awesome. You are, I think, one of the, you're one of the poster children in terms of New York tech companies. I know that Redpoint is invested because I know Tomas. I think, is Tomas on your board? Tomas Tungus?
He is. He is the SaaS guru himself.
Mr. Metrics.
Yes.
Distills everything down to a few bar charts. It makes it all so simple. I think you told me you can't disclose the revenue range, but we'll assume, somewhere on the path to 100 million. How much money have you raised? Tell us a little bit about your financing.
Sure. I mean, to date, we've raised 113.5 million. Exactly. Our last round was actually led by Tiger Global, which was our Series D, and that in itself was 40 million. So wow. We've been very successful in fundraising over the last couple of years.
Well, I hope that yields a positive outcome for you personally, my friend. How big is your team? Tell us about sort of like and the different functions, because as I mentioned in the intro, you're overseeing so many different teams that are interacting with your customers. So walk us through the org chart a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. So when I look at the sales side of the house, we are now at 25 account executives with 3 sales directors. Our business development team is now 23 people strong, both here in New York, and we just opened up a new office down in Raleigh, Durham, which is kind of our HQ2. That's got a director and 3 team leads. Our revenue operations function, which is sales ops, marketing ops, and sales enablement, which is a team of 4. Our sales engineering team, as of today, is now a team of 5. Our global channel team, which is a team of 4. So, add it all up, that is our sales organization today, and a team that I'm really proud of, because when I joined here, just over 2 years and a quarter ago, we were a team of 3 AEs and 1 BDR. So we've come a long way.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly, in a very short time. And then on the customer experience side, which kind of is my professional services team, which is a team of 12, customer success team, which is a team of 6, and the support team, which is a team of 6. And all 3 of those functions are going through rapid growth as well. So yeah, it's been quite a journey since joining Kustomer, and very excited about, the talent that we're able to, acquire, retain, and some of the leadership that I've built out in both those parts of the business.
How did you determine Raleigh Durham? I imagine, was it a scientific or a fairly robust process where you looked at all the normal cities, might be like Salt Lake City or Phoenix or Denver or Portland, Oregon? Am I correct that that's where you're putting a lot of your BDRs, your sort of commercial AEs? Who's in the Raleigh Durham space, and how did you pick that as a city?
Yeah, so Raleigh Durham is our BDR team, one of our squads there. It's some support team members, customer success. We're actually putting engineering functions, obviously that don't report into me, but engineering functions down there, designers, product managers. So for us, it truly is, an HQ2, and at some point it will resemble a lot of the same functions that exist here in New York. When we looked at a number of different options, for us, it was one of the key things was proximity to New York, right? Mm-hmm. Where could we as an executive team, all our, execs to date are New York based, where could we get to within kind of do a day trip? And we looked at, everything from upstate New York to, we looked at Philadelphia, we looked at Tennessee, we looked at Raleigh Durham. So we looked at a number of different options. Initially, when we started thinking about it, we did look at areas like Austin, Denver, et cetera. But it became very clear to us very quickly that we wanted to be able to get in down there, pretty quickly on an as needed basis. So it didn't have to be we'll go out there 3 weeks out. So for example, we have some things that we want to do with the biz dev team, next week. And we're able to just book a flight and get down there. So it's pretty convenient for us from that perspective.
Cool. Well, that's cool. I remember when I was at GLG, many years ago, it was probably over 13 years ago, I think, that we decided to open up Austin, Texas. I think we were one of the first companies that sort of relocated and built a big office there. And our cross-reference was, highly educated, underemployed. I don't think underemployed is true anymore in Austin, perhaps nowhere in the country, but that was what we were always looking for.
Yeah, underemployed is yeah, like to your point. I mean, hovering at 3%. I don't know where that is, especially in the tech space. But the thing for us also is Raleigh-Durham has a great pedigree. We all know the schools that are down there. I hate to mention them, but
Where did you go to school?
Yeah, I went to school upstate New York, but the Duke grads, at least some of them in our offices, are quick to remind everybody where they went to school. So I give them a hard time. But from my standpoint, you've got Duke, you've got UNC and NC State, and so there's a great talent pool down there that we're all well aware of, and it helps us across the business because for us, we really are a platform company. So having that that tech talent becomes important really in most sides of the business, and there's a lot of that down there, which is great for us.
Fantastic. Well, I love to hear it. You're at the top of your profession at this point, managing a number of different teams, leading one of the companies that's growing the quickest, at least in the New York City area. How'd you get into sales? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, you started off as a developer. So walk us through, and the reason that we ask is, of course, because it's nearly impossible to major in sales, and every person that we talk to on the podcast has a different journey. So walk us through your journey in terms of how you got to this point.
Yeah, so I and you could tell me if I'm running too long, but I like to break this into two chapters when I tell this story because
it depends how long the chapters are before I interject.
All right, fair enough. I'll try to give the abridged version, but I look at chapter 1 as simply the journey into sales, right? Before even the journey into sales management. Like you said, I started my career as a developer, and I'd been coding since I was a kid, and when I graduated from college, it was just a natural thing for me to do. And I quickly realized that I was going to be a good developer, but I was never going to be a great developer. I worked with some great developers, and I saw what they went through and kind of what they lived, ate and breathed. And for me, I did not like sitting in a cube and staring at a screen for 10 hours, right? That was not I liked, engaging people, et cetera. And that just wasn't the job back in those days as a developer. So I was very fortunate. I was working for a client. I was living down in Jacksonville, Florida, and our client was CSX Transportation. And they were in the process of implementing a call center software, and they needed someone to interface with the consultant that they'd brought in to kind of navigate their internal constituents. And they asked me to be that interface with the people and the business users and working on the technology as well. And so that was a fantastic experience. And, when the time came, for me to move on from that particular engagement, I did what everybody did back in those days, which was I threw my resume on monster.com. And the consultancy that I'd actually been working with on that particular project reached out to me and asked me if I would come join them. And so I ended up becoming a consultant managing and implementing call center CRM software for clients like Bank of America, UPS, and Eckerd Drug. So I actually shifted out of being a developer now to more of a kind of program manager, tech consultant. So how did I get into sales? Around the .com, I got a call from somebody who a recruiter wanted to talk to me about a role as a sales engineer. And my initial reaction was, thanks, but no thanks. I said to the recruiter, I said, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, sales, those are the guys that sell a bag of goods that I end up having to clean up, right? And the way he explained it to me, he said, no. He goes, "Vikas, the sales engineer is the technical conscience of the deal." I remember those words. And I remember, the guy's name was Charlie Ryan. That's how he explained it to me. And I liked it, but, I liked the way he framed it, but I still wasn't sold. What ultimately sold me was this company wanted to fly me down to Charlotte, North Carolina. And, I think I was 20 something at the time. So I said, look, at the very least, I'm getting a free overnight trip down to Charlotte. So I said, you know what, I'll take it. And over a 6:30 breakfast with the CEO of the company, a gentleman by the name of Don DeLoach, I just remember him telling me that he had started his career at Sybase as an SE. So here I am, 20 something years old, and all that's going through my head is, here's a career path, sales engineer to CEO. And that doesn't sound too bad to me.
You're on that path as we speak.
Yeah. And that's what began my career in sales. So chapter 1 is now officially over, and I've now leapfrogged from developer to consultant to sales engineer.
Well, I have some questions. The first is,
Please.
You said, I quickly realized I wasn't going to be a great developer. Let's unpack that a little bit. What are the skills what are you not good at that informed you as you did your, introspection and self-analysis to figure out that you were not going to be good at development?
Yeah, I think one of the signs of a great developer, and I hear the term nowadays, the 10x engineer. It's not just about writing code, but it's the 10x engineer is able to write code that runs efficiently and is looking for kind of the best way to solve it.
And by efficiently, you mean sort of using the least compute possible, the fewest lines of code, but also the one that taxes the computing resources the best, or some combination of all of that, just the most efficient way to get there.
That's right. And also some creativity, right, around, challenging areas. For me, I would hate to say I was a lazy developer, but my code would work. But I would say there were times when I was in a review process and it definitely wasn't the most efficient way, where I'll never forget, a senior engineer who's reviewing some of my code. He said, "It works." And he kind of was like looking at me a bit puzzled. He said, "But what you did in 20 lines, you could have done in 4, right?" And so I think that was, one example. And I think a lot of it, really is that passion. And I think, I enjoyed coding. And like I said, I'd been doing it since I was a kid, to a degree back then. And I hate to get myself in trouble now in case somebody tries to give me a test. It came naturally. But
I was doing it on Commodore 64 and 128.
Yes, I had the Commodore 64 was the computer I learned to program on. So yes, you
Awesome.
and I are aligned there.
We're the same generation.
It's amazing how much power we now have on our cell phone as compared to what the Commodore 64 had. Right?
I know, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean that's one example of what I would say. And then it was also just the amount of effort that, I saw them willing to put in, where, like I said, I want, just locked into a cube for 10, 12 hours a day, just pumping out lines and lines of, great code. And for me, I wanted that, human interaction. I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to talk about the problems and solving them. And like I said, this is going back more than a few years. That was something I saw from some of the great developers I had the opportunity to work with.
Which was just that they liked being in that room alone, working on this problem, iterating on this problem, thinking about the cleverest solution. And they didn't need, bouncing off of other people's energy in the same way that maybe you did.
Exactly. You can identify them today. We didn't have these back in the day, but if you walk around a lot of development areas today, you'll see developers that are sitting there with the the Beats by Dre or the Bose noise canceling headphones, and they're just locked into the zone. And like I said, this predates some of those that equipment, but yeah, very much that same mindset.
Got it. So, second question. Thank you for that. And the reason that I ask is I mean, maybe it seems straightforward, but my perspective and my experience is that a lot of people misdiagnose what they're good at and what they are bad at, what they like and don't like. And so I think really dissecting the fundamental activities within a specific job to tell you, it's not just I don't like sales, but I don't like this component, and this component is a huge part of sales or coding or whatever it may be. So but the second question I have is just interested because we want to talk a little bit about sales engineering. And maybe it was Charlie Ryan, but tell me if I got the name wrong. This person that said a sales engineer is the technical conscience of the deal. Tell me what that means. Walk us through that phrase, because it's a great phrase.
Yeah, it is a great phrase. And yeah, Charlie Ryan. And at the time, I didn't really understand what that meant. I mean, I understood obviously the words, but the meaning behind it, and something I came to embrace, as I kind of started on my track as a sales engineer. From that standpoint, what, Charlie was basically referring to, especially when I said, whoa, sales, those are the bad guys, was a lot of times you have your account executives that are going in and looking at, the problem that the customer is trying to solve. And they have a pretty good understanding of what their technology is, the use cases, and what they're supposed to do. But marrying the two and how it's actually going to work in that particular customer's environment from a technical implementation perspective, usability, user experience, reporting, all of that is, about, 5 levels too deep. And so really validating that we can deliver upon the promise, right, is kind of what Charlie was alluding to. And then what I tried to live up to many years as a sales engineer. We're saying, okay, yes, we understand here's the problem statement. This is what our, product does. But now how is it actually going to exist in this particular environment that the customer already finds themselves in, right? Because they already have tools in place, they have people in place, they have processes in place. How do we actually live within that environment? And I think that's kind of the technical conscience, I think, to a degree, is making sure we feel comfortable that this predates the world of SaaS, right? But is this a deal that we can actually live up to and be successful at? So that's how I think Charlie was alluding to, and how I came to embrace the technical conscience of the deal.
Is there a tension between sales and sales engineering, to your point? If you're going to be the conscience and the account executive wants to promise the world to the customer, and the sales engineering team has to manage expectations appropriately, does that create a natural tension such as there is between marketing and sales sometimes, or sales and customer success?
I think it can. I think a lot of it obviously depends on, how an account executive wants to go and sell, right? And we've worked with all sorts of account executives. And in my tenure as a sales engineer in particular, I got to work with so many different types of personalities and backgrounds and experiences. And from my perspective, it's all about that. I mean, I had some salespeople that I worked with who knew the product inside and out and completely understood what it could and couldn't do and wanted to position it appropriately. And then you have some people who, we can kind of jam this kind of, square peg into a round hole, and you're having to push back. And that naturally created tension. But ultimately, we have to look at the customer. Is the customer going to be successful? And unfortunately, the reality may be there are times where your product may not be the best fit. And yes, that creates a very healthy dialogue, needless to say, between an SC and an AE.
Awesome. So let's go back to the story a little bit, because, chapter 1, to your point, is you went from being a developer into being a sales engineer. So transitioning into sales. But there's a big difference between being an individual contributor and somebody that's running a team, particularly a team as multifunctional as yours is, where they're just, there's a lot of different disciplines under your current umbrella. How did you make that transition from being, you're a sales engineer, so ostensibly you're not carrying a quota, your quotas or your KPIs are probably associated to the sales team that you're supporting. So first you make it from sales engineer, either individual contributor or to manager. How did you make it to what is this effectively? I know you're called SVP of Sales and Customer Success, but you're basically the CRO. How did you make that journey? Walk us through that.
Yeah, no. So that's chapter 2, right? So I had a very interesting opportunity at Oracle when I was in EMEA. I was living in London, and I came into Oracle via the PeopleSoft acquisition, where I was a sales engineer. And what Oracle was doing at the time, they were going through their own journey and transformation as a tech company to a company that was also selling applications, right? If you look back at the history, PeopleSoft was really kind of the initial foray of Oracle into the app space. And that transition, was quite challenging in the fact that you've got all these people out there, these salespeople across Europe that are comfortable selling technology. When I look at technology, we're talking about database and other technology products that Oracle had. And they unto themselves had their own selling motion, right? Selling database is a very different motion than selling an HCM software or CRM. So they created this role of these business development specialists that would work with the regional teams to transition them from tech to app sales. And I found myself as one of these business development specialists in the CRM group, because CRM obviously had been my my background. So this gave me great exposure to fly all across Europe and help these, different geos transform. So that was responsibility of everything from, sales execution. So, go to market, sales execution on the sales cycles. Now, obviously, I was able to bring in the product and solution expertise as my days as a sales engineer in CRM as well. So this was a great learning ground for me because, I'm flying to the Czech Republic, I'm flying to Turkey, to Ireland to help all these different teams make this transition. So it gave me kind of a great opportunity and exposure to that. And kind of similarly, I was in this type of role when I moved back to the States to help now the applications group move from on-premise to the cloud. So I was, one of the first members of a, specialist team to help us, after the Siebel acquisition, we actually had a cloud CRM software that competed with Salesforce to help us navigate from moving from on-prem to the cloud. So this was a great learning environment. I was meeting with, working hand in hand with senior leaders across the business to go through these two big transitions or transformations at Oracle. When I ended up leaving Oracle, I actually ended up joining one of our partners, implementation partners. And this is where, I kind of came in at an MD title, but had the responsibility for everything from business development to the tech resources. So that was where I really got, firsthand, not only exposure for managing the team members, so managing the business development team, managing the technical implementation resources, executing a go-to-market strategy. And for the first time, I actually owned deal negotiation because I had to negotiate our contracts and our services and statements of work with companies like United Healthcare, Fidelity, Starbucks. So once again, just a very great learning ground for, no longer being an individual contributor, now managing team members and staff and P&L, et cetera.
What were your biggest learnings there when you moved from being an individual contributor to managing a big group of people?
Yeah, I don't think this is, unique to me by any stretch. I think the biggest thing is learning to offload work was my number one challenge by far, right? Very, used to, doing everything myself, being a member of a team, but, really hard driving and being fully responsible for, my remit and what I'm supposed to do and kind of wholly, to myself, where now I needed to be very comfortable sharing responsibilities with fellow team members and allowing them to, take on responsibility, fail in certain instances, not having to jump in. So really that first opportunity to manage people is what I gained there, which, was a tremendous learning experience.
Was there a lesson or a strategy or a set of tactics that you used or heuristic? How did you teach yourself? I think what you're talking about is just delegation, right? And this idea that you can't do everything yourself. Other people are going to have to do some of the things. And when other people do some of the things, they're going to do them differently than you would do them. Sometimes that means, from your perspective, worse, but you have to let them do that so they can continue to evolve. How did you learn how to do that besides the idea, besides like maybe going home one day and realizing that you were totally underwater and swamped and needed to give other people some work? How did you build, that skill?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, and I've most of my management style or approach to business is really I've cheated in a way that I've really been blessed over the last 20 something years to have worked with and for just some amazing leaders. And one lesson that I took to heart was one of my bosses at PeopleSoft used to say, you hire good people and you get out of the way. And that's one thing that I did pretty early on in this kind of first management opportunity was I got out of the way and didn't try to over inject myself. And I think that's the biggest thing I see, now being on the other side and having, promoted people into first time management opportunities is my recommendation to them is don't try to get your hands in everything. Just step back and let your team run a bit and be there for them and jump in when appropriate, when they need help, when they ask for help, but don't, basically don't become that micromanager. And because I'd worked for, somebody who had that ethos, that always kind of rung in the back of my mind was, hire good people and get out of the way. And something I still try to do, obviously, to this day.
It's good advice, good feedback. So, I mean, I guess there's a difference in my experience between being a manager and being a manager of managers. And I think when you think about, because now, if we look at your, as I've mentioned, you're a customer, you guys are growing so quickly and you're running all of these different functions. What have you learned that's different? It's one thing to go from you are an individual contributor, you run a team, to all of a sudden you're responsible for all of these different functions. And in many instances, you don't have the experience in those functions to provide a lot of the same kind of support that somebody that came from those functions would be able to provide. How do you tie it all together? What are the strategies? Do you use, is it goal setting? Is it objectives and key results? How do you both bring everybody together below you and also articulate the strategy really clearly up to the board so that they have confidence that you're the right steward for all of these different functions?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And you're right. I mean, the interesting thing for me is I've been around long enough. And I think one of the things I've really prided myself on over the last 20 something years is really trying to learn the business and observing. And though my time, for example, as a support rep was very short lived, I did it probably for, probably less than 6 months. I've worked and learned and been side by side by some great support leaders. So yes, have I run a support operation, 24/7 support operation? Absolutely not. And I'd be lying to anybody who I said. But, even when I first inherited, for example, CX here, I actually was responsible for our support team of one, right? And a lot of what we've built here, I kind of built from scratch. Now I've brought in leaders who actually know what they're doing and who have completely up-leveled these different functions. But I've got enough experience where I think I understand the fundamentals, right? For any of these different groups within my organization, professional services, it's been a few years, right? But I was a consultant. I wrote our first statement of work when I got here as an example, right? So a lot of those things I'm pretty fortunate that I've had all these different responsibilities and I've been able to, kind of create a foundational element in each of them, right? Customer success, professional services, support, sales, biz dev, et cetera. So that's really helped me. Now, having said that, being able to now bring in leaders who are, as I said, completely up-leveled. And one of the things I'm a big believer in, and I'm unashamed to say this, is I hire people smarter than me. So I brought in people who really know what they're doing in these different areas of the business because I'm willing to learn from them. I'm willing to work with them, and I'm very prideful in that. And then, of course, helping them where I can. And my responsibility as a leader is to get obstacles out of their way so that we can be successful together, whether those obstacles exist internally or whether they're things that we mutually face out there in the market from our competition, market circumstances, et cetera.
When you mentioned that you've brought in, you've up-leveled sort of the talent, and something that I think about a lot, which is they call it, stage-appropriate leadership, which is basically, we're looking for people that have experienced doing this before. And that's something that, each of us as leaders ourselves faces over time. I guess what's your approach to, let's say a customer's goal is to IPO, you want to be a multi-billion-dollar company at some point. At some point, there might be, some conversation at the board level about bringing in the person that has been there, done that for a 250 million ARR company or a 500 million ARR company. I guess, what's your attitude towards that? But more interestingly, how do you make sure that you're always, to the extent that you want to be, you're always the person that gets that first nod? What do you do to make sure that even if you haven't done exactly that experience before, you put yourself in the best possible position to grab that opportunity?
Yeah. So for me, it's, kind of never rest on your laurels. And I look at opportunities. To me, if I'm not learning, it no longer gets interesting. And so for me, that it's absolutely critical. And I look at, whether it's, podcasts, like this one, if it's the Revenue Collective, right, where I can learn from people who are at different phases, who have different experiences. If it's books, if it's advisors, if it's mentors, it's always continuing to push and get better, so that at the end of the day, as a board member, right, my responsibility is to, for my investment, to make sure that we are, progressing and we're getting to the next stage. And I will absolutely evaluate every member of the team. And I will say, okay, is Vikas the person who can get us to this next rung? And it's my responsibility to show, look, I have the capacity. I've been, diligent, and I've been effective to get us to here. And look, I have enough of a plan and approach, either because of experiences I've had elsewhere. Now, I have the benefit of actually having worked at more mature companies prior to coming to Kustomer. So this is actually a learning experience. Actually, going from 0 to X has actually been a tremendous learning opportunity for me, because I'm usually the guy who goes in at 150 million and takes it, north of that. So this is a different learning opportunity for me in starting from 0. So I think that's the key thing for me, is to show that I've got the desire to learn, and I can put it into effect to get us to wherever we're headed.
I love it. Makes sense to me. Last question from my perspective, and then, we have a section where we pay it forward and we hear about some of the people that have influenced you. But in terms of a substantial question, it's really about, big companies versus small companies. You've been at Oracle. So many of the people on the show have worked at some point at Oracle, which is really kind of ground zero for learning and understanding true enterprise technology sales. And now you joined Kustomer 2+ years ago, when it was a much, much smaller team. I think, it was you and 2 or 3 other people. So what are the biggest differences, both in terms of approach and mindset, when you're at a super big company to a very, very small company? How do you have to reorient yourself?
Yeah. So for me, one, Oracle was just a tremendous learning opportunity. It was like getting a, MBA in technology sales, as you kind of alluded to. And not only to learn what to do, and sometimes to learn what not to do, right? So from that perspective, I really appreciated, that opportunity, everything I learned there. I think the biggest thing from going from a big company to, a company like Kustomer is, at Oracle, there's a tremendous safety net. And it doesn't mean that you as an individual, as a, business unit, don't have targets to hit, et cetera. But ultimately, there's so many different businesses that Oracle is in. It really is a, kind of, like the Borg. If you're a Star Trek aficionado, you can appreciate it's going to keep moving along, right? And that, is a testament of course, to everything that, Larry and Safra have built. So to me, that's fantastic. When you're at a company, and, when I came into this particular role, at Kustomer, everything goes back to you. The success and failure, now don't get me wrong, is obviously with my peers, my engineering peers, my product, my CEO, my head of marketing, et cetera. But ultimately, especially as somebody who owns revenue, it lives and dies with you. There is no quote unquote safety net. So that is definitely something. And that's where I see a lot of people struggle with the transition from going from a big company to a startup. I think it's the pressure. There's definitely a different type of pressure. I think the pace is something people can't keep up with. And it's something I definitely look for when I'm interviewing people. And so those are some of the things that I think are markedly different between, the bigger company like an Oracle or a Salesforce to a startup like us.
Is there a way to prepare yourself for the pace and the pressure? Or you really can't prepare yourself? It's just, it when you get there, and you can either make it or not make it. What do you think?
So so here's the thing. I think it's really unfair to expect somebody to figure it out. What I mean by that is, what I try to do during the interview process is I try to be, as candid as can be, and unveil the kimono, right? Like, and it's one of the things I try to tell people, like, as you know, and I say, I'm not trying not to scare you, but I want you to know what you're signing up for. It is a different pace, and it's okay if this is not for you. Doesn't mean you're not a great salesperson or you're not a great customer success manager. And it doesn't mean we're not a great company. It's all about timing and fit. And I think what a lot of people try to do, in the interview process is both sides of the table try to tell people what they want to hear. And that's when you're setting up, creating a recipe for failure. The other thing for me is I like to see people who've seen the movie before. What I mean by that is whether they were at a big company or at an early stage company is they understand the motion. I think what a lot of startups try to do is teach people. And especially at, roles that I would say are not, entry level roles. And I think that becomes very challenging because once again, the pace, the expectations are so high. And so those are some of the key, I would say missteps that I've observed and I'm trying not to replicate.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Well, Vikas, it's been great having you on the show. We do have that section where we sort of pay it forward. When you think about people that you want us to know about, people that have had a big impact on your life, or ideas or books, drop a few breadcrumbs for us so that we can, follow the breadcrumb trail and figure out what made Victus Bambury.
Yeah. So, I think, as I mentioned before, I've really been blessed to have had some great mentors and people that I've worked with. One that I often look back on and I'm still in touch with her and reach out to her for feedback and advice is Erica Schultz, who's the CRO at New Relic. I had the opportunity of working for Erica at Oracle and then again at LivePerson. And really, as her kind of right hand at times, I had a tremendous amount of visibility into how she, managed, how she coached, how she executed, the level of focus that it takes to be successful in our business, as well as, as I said before, the willingness to surround yourself with, people who have their expertise in areas where you may not, and I remember, we were a very direct sales led business at Oracle. And Erica brought in, when we were at LivePerson, she brought in people who had tremendous amount of experience in the channel. And so I think, things like that I really learned from her. So, she's now the CRO at New Relic. And so somebody that I think everybody, if you're not aware of, should keep very close eye on because she's done some amazing things as, obviously New Relic has grown into one of the most successful tech companies on the planet. So, that's one in particular.
I love it. And, you're not the first person that's mentioned Erica Schultz. So hopefully one day we'll have her on the show. I reached out to them before and we were lucky to have Roger Scott, who's their head of, their EVP of customer success. But one day we'll get Erica on the show. Vikas, it's been great having you on the show. If folks want to, they're listening, maybe they want to pursue a career in sales engineering. Maybe they want to work for you at Customer. What's your favorite way for them to reach out to you?
LinkedIn is, probably the easiest way to reach out to me just because I'm easily found. There's only one Vikas Bhambri on LinkedIn, I think, maybe two, but I'm the guy based in New York. So pretty easy to find me there on LinkedIn, and please feel free to reach out. And, especially for me, if you drop at least a sentence or two as to why you're reaching out to me, you're very likely to get a connection and a follow-up.
Sounds good. Perfect. Vikas, thanks for being on the show. We will talk to you this Friday for Friday Fundamentals. But until then, I hope you have a great couple of days.
Sam, thanks for having me.
Hey folks, it's Sam Jacobs, Sam's Corner. Great interview with Victus Bambury, who is a friend, a member of Revenue Collective, but also running sales and success over at Kustomer. And he just had a number of great insights. But I think, the one that I want to leave everybody with today is what a great entry point for sales engineering or solutions architects can be. Because I think in the modern world where we're selling technical products, I think the challenge is, can we combine technical knowledge and product knowledge with sales acumen and sales expertise and sales discipline? Now, you may say that's the reason that we have a difference between sales engineers and salespeople. I think that's true, but I also think that product knowledge, deep, authentic, technical knowledge of how technology actually works, I really think it's very, very valuable. I think the salespeople that have it, the salespeople that come from a sales engineering, sometimes even a product background, those people are just positioned in a different way than salespeople that have no understanding of how the technology, how everything from the kernel within the CPU all the way up to the application layer, how those things run, how they work, what the different interlocking parts are, particularly when it comes to the cloud, when it comes to big data, when it comes to machine learning and AI. Those things can seem very exotic if you haven't spent a little bit of time getting to know how the technology actually works. And sales engineering will often be the framework and the context that will enable you to rise up. And we've talked to a number of people on the show whose background is in sales engineering. So I think it's just a really relevant lesson in addition to, a lot of the other lessons that Vikas mentioned, some of which are just about seizing the opportunity, not thinking too much, but when there's a big opportunity in front of you, that you jump on it and you make sure that you make the most of it. And that's when, Vikas has lived overseas, he's lived all over the world. That's because when opportunity knocks, he answers the door. That's why he talks about his career as a strange journey. And it's maybe a little strange, but most people's careers are strange journeys at this point. The big differentiator is going to be when there's a great opportunity, do you take that opportunity and do you lean into it? So I thought it was a great conversation. Before we go, we want to thank our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Vidyard. Vidyard helps you easily record, send, and track who is viewing your video content in real time in 3 easy steps. Email isn't dead, but it sure is boring. Add video to your emails to stand out in the inbox with Vidyard. Go to vidyard.com/saleshacker for more information. Additionally, if you want to reach out to me, you can. It's linkedin.com/the-word-in and then /Sam F. Jacobs. And then, of course, we want to thank Outreach. Outreach is the leading sales engagement platform. So thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.